Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Linda Novelius, and I will be your moderator. Our speaker today is Norbert Kouwenberg. He's the Audit Director at Group Audit Risk Management at ABN AMRO, and he's going to share his insights into structuring and covering the audit universe.
Thank you very much, Linda, for this nice introduction. This webinar is all about my experience as 30 years background towards the 10,000 years of experience, I suppose, which is in the webinar now, about audit assurance, risk management, and reporting and value chain auditing. A lot of words, and I hope I will be able for the next hour to share this with you in about 56-7 slides for introducing you into the details. So what are the learning objectives for today? Today, I want to share with you something about how your assurance role works in your department, the elements to score in the universe, how important it is to get assurance when you perform your audit work in an audit and in your audit year plan, and how your message is going to be interpreted when you do the audit work and report in a report or at the end of a quarter or a year. As Lynn said, my name is Norbert Kouwenberg. I can be connected if you would like to via LinkedIn. Please send me a request or a question regarding this presentation. Feel free. I'm happy to contact you. A famous writer, already a long time ago, Stephen Covey, wrote about the 7 habits of highly effective people. And the number 2 in this really intrigued me. It's beginning with the end in mind. And that's also something which is relevant for us. Because the mission statement of internal audit is saying all about getting to objective assurance via your audit work. And this objective assurance is easy to put it in a line, like to enhance and protect organizational value by providing risk-based and objective assurance, advice and insight. But how are you going to achieve this? Where is it based upon? And how can you demonstrate that the work you've done is sufficient? Not so easy. If you would compare our assurance role in your company, and in my company, for example, towards other departments like legal or compliance or risk management, as I'm working in a bank, what is different? Let me tell you something about a reflection on this. What topics do influence your assurance role? Well, we've got a lot of external factors. Some 5 years ago, COVID-19 did not exist. And now look at us. I would completely change our way of working. Like this webinar, it's hybrid and everybody can connect. We got all kind of international political tensions in Eastern Europe, Eastern Asia, new regulations coming up. Our corporate behavior is put in the spotlight via social media, and everybody is putting his or her opinion about how other people are behaving. We see increasingly fast changes in energy prices, commodity prices, and of course the interest. And suddenly, the big institutions like Credit Suisse and the Silicon Valley Bank, who were there for years, are suddenly gone. A lot of risks, however, also opportunities come up, like the ChatGPT box, the artificial intelligence. So events are from every day, and most likely the next years are still coming up. Internally also, lots of things are happening in my company, but I suppose also in yours. We see all kinds of challenges to hire high quality staff. They're very difficult to find and to maintain in your company. We got in our company lots of extra requests for investigations and audits, etc. And they are constantly creating friction in the audit year plan. So what to prioritize and what to choose. We recently had an external quality assurance from the IAA. Luckily, it gave us a very good note, so we are well prepared as an audit department, but I can imagine it also creates lots of tension in your department to understand, do you meet the standards as required? And like I said, also all kind of Opportunities arise, like artificial intelligence to be used in your audit working programs, data analytics, process mining, and text mining, things which did not exist 5-8 years ago and now are the topic of everyday discussions. So lots of things are constantly changing in our department. Now the question then comes up to my mind, if these kind of circumstances are changing in your work, in your environment, how does it impact your assurance role? Let's make the following analogy. Let's say that our product development department creates great kind of products, and the purchasing department buys all kind of goods for everyday use. And of course, we got a back office IT operations who creates and maintains the infrastructure of the company. And our HR department is recruiting the best staff possible and trains, and everybody is happy with the drivers you've been choosing and nourishing. Now we got other support departments like finance or legal or a compliance department or a quality department, and they have set indicators in the first line in your commercial environment to monitor how they are achieving their objectives and their budgets. And of course, the board of our company has set out a strategy for an optimal performance with the aim to win and to get the goals realized. So what's then the internal audit focus? On providing assurance, as it is in our mission statement. Well, audit can oversee everything of the past slides, but also can see way more. We can see the terrain in which we are driving. We can see and understand weather conditions, the condition of the track. And we can also see the competitors in your industry, the stakeholders in the company and outside, the customers. So a way broader perspective, we can look at the entire event structurally, but also strategically. And in the end, if we observe and test if all parties work together, we have great products. And of course, in the end, whenever we perform as a team, we combine our knowledge, the 10,000 years we have, the eagerness, the passion, and the ambition to create nice products, helping the company to achieve objectives. So that's our role, that's our assurance, to understand and to combine and to give reports and conclusions to help the company improve and understand how well they are in control to achieve their objectives. Well, of course, it requires a lot of things to be prepared of. We need to have a sound methodology in the company. We need to have an understanding about the company itself, as it is stated in the universe, reflecting the company. We need to have a well-prepared year plan or a semi-year plan or quarterly, whatever you use to plan the work and to communicate about your budget. We need to have an understanding about the company to audit only the relevant things, the things which create added value to be audited upon. A lot of teamwork and most likely much more. Because beginning with the end in mind, what are the topics you need to have an understanding of? Well, first of all, you need to have an understanding how to shape the universe, as most likely we are in with a big team here in this webinar, and every company has a different kind of structure. So what is the optimal structure of your company? And how do you define priority in that universe? If you have planned a year plan or a semi-year plan, how do you know that it's going to give you a coverage on the main risks and the processes which are relevant to audit upon? And after realizing your audit year plan, do you conclude on individual assignments in reports or also in quarterly management letters or in a yearly management letters? And can you compare the outcome of individual audits towards each other via a rating model or a conclusion model? How do you add up the audit work from individual reports to a total management letter each quarter? Does your conclusion has a certain validity in time compared to an audit you did 1 or 2 years ago? Can you make a distinction between the ratings you used in the past, the conclusions, the follow-up work you've done? So all these kind of things, you need to have an understanding when you plan audit work, how you communicate. About 1.5 years ago in the Netherlands, we did a survey. And in this survey, we contacted the larger internal audit functions to ask them questions about the topic coverage, ratings, and assurance. And a big part of this presentation is based on this survey to reflect on the outcome and to share with you the insights we received in understanding and interpreting the information which was shared. Via some polls, I would love to see your reflections, how you are doing this work. That's why the first poll question comes up.
So you can see, do you conclude your audit report or memo with a conclusion and or an audit rating? The absolute majority has yes with a conclusion and an audit rating, 72%.
And that's, I suppose, something I was expecting. This is highly aligned with the information we receive from the survey in the Netherlands, where you can see the yellow and the purple in, well, it's only somewhere about 80–90% of the audit departments in the Netherlands, and they're quite alike with the audit people involved in this webinar. Most of our audit products have conclusion ratings. In the new IPPF, the International Professional Practices Framework, we also have a preference as IAA Global to focus upon a conclusion at the end of a report. So that's highly advisable. So that's quite alike. Now, my interesting next topic would be, if you make conclusions, what is your conclusion about? And that's the second poll. So is it something about saying, well, the controls are effective, the controls are efficient, they say something about the residual risk in the process, they say something about the achievement of business objectives, or none, or something else?
Right, and we can see at the poll results, the most leading one is 64% level of effectiveness of controls.
Yeah, well, it's like everybody already read the PDF available, because it's fully aligned with the survey we did in the Netherlands. So most of us audit functions in the Netherlands and the people in the webinar, when they conclude in a report, they say something about the level of effectiveness of controls. In the Netherlands, the second best was the level of residual risks. And I suppose maybe it's something with a semantic thing, because if you say something about how effective controls are, you automatically implicitly say something about the residual risks in the process. But it's just a matter of defining, I suppose. It's somewhat different if you say something about the efficiency of controls, because a process could be super inefficient or efficient, but it's different than effectiveness or residual risks. So that's an interesting one. But in here, indeed, most of us score effectiveness. In the Netherlands, we also came up with the question for using a rating model. Most companies in the Netherlands use a rating model, so it's either a 4-digit, that's the purple, or a 3-digit rating model. So that's in total about more than 60%. And it's of course giving you the opportunity to evaluate individual reports towards each other, to say something about, well, dear board, we reported 20 reports with a level 3 rating and 10 reports with level 2 rating. So that's easy to compare, and it's also stating a sort of an, well, objective benchmark to where you report upon how effective controls are in a company. In our company, we use the COSO ERM cube. What you see here is the cube we use. It's not the oldest one, it's not the newest one. it's something we just use because not only the third line, as we are in our banking company, but also other departments like risk management use the ERM cube as a means of communication and management tool. So it's easy to compare, and that's why we use this one. For the people who don't know this model, COSO is short for the Commission of Sponsoring Organizations. It was something which was started up in the early 1990s in the US, where a big bank like the Bank of Savings and Loans went bankrupt, and other companies had difficulty in managing their daily processes. So a special committee of sponsoring organizations who contributed was created, and they investigated why all kind of problems were happening in the company, and they came up with this model. At first, it was a model with only 5 components. This one has 8 components, from internal environment until monitoring. So that's the front line, that's the control set with all the control components. The top side dimension is about the business objectives to achieve. So these are generically grouped business objectives. And the third dimension is saying something about, well, the business processes, the departments, the lines of activities, and so on. And with this model, it's going to be too much time to dwell into detail. With this model, you can say something about how well a company is being managed upon. And in our methodology in group audit, we use this model referential, but also to prepare working programs and to report upon for the audit work we've done. If you look at the SCOSI ERM model, it's saying something about how events are hitting the company, both positively and negatively. While the negative events happening to the company, you want to manage, to mitigate, to control that in the end, the events happening, the negative ones, are not creating a situation which is above your risk appetite, above your standard for getting out of control. However, the good ones in the end are the ones you want to embrace, the opportunities. So the model provides you opportunities for both managing the not so good ones and to embrace the good ones, the green ones, the red ones you really don't like, because you want to be in control with a control set to manage in the end that the residual risks are, well, within your risk appetite. And with this in mind, we just said that most of us say something in the audit report about the level of effectiveness of controls. So technically, you're saying something about how well the control set as key components are working in the company to manage all these bad types of risks. And it's going to be interesting for people who report on the efficiency of controls, because a company could be highly efficient, or a department, but is saying not something about how effective the controls are to manage all these negative events. And it's going to be more interesting if you say something about, for example, residual risks, because of course you then manage all the risks, but at what cost? So for me, if we all provide assurance like we started this webinar, I also already come to a first draft conclusion that we manage this assurance in different ways. And then the question comes up, is your assurance aligned with the structure and the risk assessment you use in the universe when planning the audit work? And when you produce an audit rating, do you benchmark this to a rating index to compare your work? And of course, after a month, a quarter, or half a year or a year, how do you aggregate all your audit issues from assignments into overall conclusions to give the central messages? Can you compare your issues? Can you compare all the audit work done? And how do you benchmark the weight, the topics into the overall conclusions? Well, in the survey, we came to the conclusion that, of course, you have to have an audit universe. This is something stated by more than 75% of the people interviewed. Not everyone uses a universe, but say 3/4 in the survey use universe. The universe is created alongside a business structure or generic processes. Some of us use a different type of universe, like for example, aligned with risk types. But say again here, about 70% uses things you can recognize in the company, business structure and generic processes. And the size of the universe is, of course, depending on the choices you make for the structure, but most of us have a bigger universe, say at least 40 entities or more. I don't have a poll for this one, but I expect that for most of us in this webinar, it's the same. So now the question for me comes, if you have structured the universe, is there a need for a minimum yearly coverage? Because if you have, for example, 50 or 80 or 100 or way more entities, do you need to do 10%, 50%? Is there a hard target to achieve? And for yourself, at least, how can you substantify the amount of work to be done for giving your audit opinion? Is there a relevance to take into account audit opinions from previous work? So is there validity of an audit you done last year to this year? And is there a request from a supervisor or a board to say to you, well, dear auditor, you need to at least do everything in the universe every 5 years, every 3 years. So is there a certain cycle? And then the real question comes, can you substantify, backtest, control, or do you do a backtest to show that you have created sufficient coverage if there is a request for every 5 years, for example? Well, in my company, we used to have the left one. And the left one is saying a puzzle of, in this case, about 75, but we used to have a universe of 500-600 entities. And you can imagine, like the colors here, things are not comparable in complexity, but also not comparable because the universe constantly changes. So because we did have a cycle, if we already took into account audit work done in a previous period, it was very difficult to compare towards the audit work done over there, because the entire company changed. Everything was taken out of context. So about 2 years ago, we created a value chain analysis model where we, this is only an example, where we use value chain definitions for the universe, and these value chains, they never change anymore. So we currently have about a little less than 40 value chains, and of course this is for a bank, but if people in the audience are also working in the bank, I think these value chains are quite normal, quite easy to understand. We split them up over the front office functions and the IT and operations department. And it's very easy to recognize them front to back, and they never change, so stable. To understand how to score, you need to understand, first of all, how the value chain is working. So it's including all the operational processes, all the IT systems, both the soft and the hardware. It's including all relevant policies, legislation, things like culture and behavior is included, but also other relevant things like financials, hierarchy, last audit work performed, regulatory stuff. This is all taken into account to understand the value chain before you can rate the value chain. Now my question is, that's poll number 3, how do you do the structuring of the universe? And the topic to discuss as a poll with 4 possible answers is there a minimum amount of coverage in your universe? No, that's an easy one. Because we don't backtest nor have demonstrated achievement, that's number B. Yes, but we have demonstrated that we have performed the plan and coverage. Oh, that's a tricky question. I never thought about it. Well, A, B, and C.
And here we have the responses. So we can quickly see that 68% says yes, and we must show that we have performed, planned, and coverage.
Well, that's a good thing. Surprisingly, the survey gave a different answer because they said, well, more than 60% doesn't need to show that they achieved a certain coverage. And then my question would come up. Well, in this case, in this audience, 60% does need to show, but still 40% does not need to show. It's a little bit different, but not too much different. So my question then would be for the 40%. So if you don't need to show or test or evidence your coverage, how do you know that you that you aggregated sufficient evidence to base your conclusion upon? And to give you some more details, so this is a chart pie where again we see how many auditable entities are in the universe of the people attended the survey. And most of us have a universe for more than 20, and I suppose the yellow one more than 40. It's also included more than 100 or so. Now, if I look at these pie charts compared to the ones I've showed you, then my conclusion is that about 40% of our audience in this survey have covered more than 20 entities per year. And also 40% have covered more than 60 entities in the universe. So approximately 50-60% is not covered. Now, of course, you can have good reasons why you don't cover it. Maybe you will say, well, it's going to be audited next year, or it was audited previous year. It's not in scope, it's not relevant, but you have to have an understanding why you prioritized, say, 50% of the universe and you prioritize 50% not to do. Is it something you communicate to the audit committee, to the board, to the people who are steering upon your outcomes? And can you also substantify for yourself that the work you did this year, next year, previous year, in the end, is continuously attributing to your assurance message? Therefore, let's first focus on the yearly risk assessment. Now, most of us use a universe where we create with prioritization a half year or year audit plan. This audit plan, in this case 80% plus, gives us a tool for our audit departments to understand what the priorities are to do audit work upon in the company. And of course, the prioritization is done on a risk assessment in the universe. 80%, 85%. So this is something I suppose most people will also do in the audience here. It gives us a budget for the board and the audit committee to say we need to do at least X amount of audits, and we're going to do this in the next quarters. Target setting is done and people in the department know what they have to do. Now the interesting thing then comes in, what is your prioritization? So what is the risk assessment to be scored upon? In the survey, it was mostly about inherent risks, 44%. Some of us score internal control risk. A big chunk, almost 30%, score something else. I don't know what, but something else. Yeah, so it's diverse. 45%, that's the biggest one, score inherent risks. Now, I already shared with you, also in the poll, that our conclusions are based on the level of effectiveness of controls. So, of course, the scoring of the effectiveness of controls says something about how much residual risk you are accepting or seeing or concluding upon in the process. So my question is, are your conclusions in the reports, are they aligned towards the prioritization you did in the universe? And I suppose if you conclude, if you put your words very nicely in your report, then you can say something about the quality of the effectiveness of control to conclude the amount of residual risk in the process. And that's well, more or less a logical conclusion also. But what about if you report about the efficiency of controls? That's not so much aligned anymore with the inherent risks. And if you only say something about the residual risks, it's saying less about the effectiveness of control, but because it could also be something that it's, well, if the inherent risks were scored too low, too high in the universe, they also are too low, too high in the conclusion of the report. So my challenge to you is: do you sometimes make and sort of a benchmark for yourself if the report conclusions are really aligned towards the universe and the risk assessment taken over there? Can you align them both in cycle, both in scores, and do you backtest the outcome of the report towards the scores being put in the universe? And just to give you some trigger for the people who don't score inherent risks, only score internal control risks, I've got two drilling platforms. Example one. One is in the Bermuda Triangle and the other one is in the Mediterranean Sea. Both of them, of course, then have most likely the same kind of internal control risks. So they would be at the same level of in the universe for prioritization, however, completely different inherent risks. So this is my call to you: take into account at least inherent risk in your audit universe for scoring. Another one is for the people who don't take strategic indicators in the macro risk assessment of the universe. Well, two examples with the same kind of inherent risk: the head office building maintenance process and the hiring and firing. Well, of course, you can understand that the planning of head office maintenance processes should be lower in your prioritization than the hiring and firing, which is, of course, way more important for the company to be to understand if the processes in control have effective controls. So what we now know is that we have to be aware that we have to structure the universe in a way it's consistent, it's stable over the years, and it's reflecting the business activities. We have an understanding about what type of macro risk assessment we are using and the consequences, and that it, of course, creates stratification of priorities in the universe. Most of us have a certain knowledge about the coverage you need to achieve via cycles or via your opinions. And we just had a short awareness session about if conclusions in a report are aligned with the assumptions for the macro risk assessment. But there is more to consider. So what type of macro risk indicators are you using? The rating system you use in single reports compared to the rating system you use business-wide? If so, and do you sometimes substantify your coverage in the audit individually via a working program and also in the universe, realizing the year or half-year plan? In the survey, we asked them if people use cycles. Well, most of us use cycles either in a 3-year cycle or a 5-year cycle. So that's the light blue and the dark blue on the left pie chart. That's about 60-70% use cycles. Sorry, the red one and the dark blue one. The light blue one don't use cycles, so that's in total about 50%. Sorry, my mistake. Now, we already came to the conclusion in the previous slide that most audit departments in the Netherlands apparently don't need to show that they achieved a minimum coverage. So that's interesting for me. So half of the survey was using cycles, but in the end, they were never confronted, nor did test work, if they achieved the cycles. So my question would then be, why do you ever use a cycle if you're never going to backtest or never have to show your responsibility of achieving a cycle? So the same as in an audit report. In an audit report, it's important, because all of us, the dark blue, create audit reports with a conclusion. What is the conclusion about? What does it cover? And of course, what does it not cover? And that's maybe a simple question, what does it not cover? But is your team, is your audit lead always aware if he or she makes a conclusion in the report that, for example, a specific IT system in the process was audited or not, that the network connected was audited or not, financial controls, strategic choices, accounting procedures, and so on. It's a lot. And you can't say, for example, that cloud and cyber risks are not important, but did you test it and did you conclude it? So in the end, my question then is, in the finalization of audit work in a single audit, what is your conclusion covering and what it's not? Because it's already very difficult to understand what type of controls to be tested upon in the working program. You've got all kind of hard controls, but behavioral aspects are, I think, even more important to test. How many times did we not take into account the human factor, the behavioral aspects? There are so many things which are not in procedures, not on paper, not in regulation. It's all about how people in the company act. And people in the company, I've seen it many times, very well prescribed processes in design and existence do not work because people are not motivated. And the other way around, highly motivated people who really understand vision, strategy, and how to work together can create a very badly written design process work very well. Let's go to poll number 4. The audit assurance you are providing. If you is it already realized whenever you put an opinion in a report? Or do you think, in your case, it needs to express a certain state of control towards a benchmark, then I achieve assurance? Or you would say, well, I even go further because I think I need to achieve sufficient coverage and it's related to the risk assessment. Or you say, well, all three are relevant for me. Or in my case, assurance is something completely different. I'm interested to your opinion and experience.
And we can now see the results. And the most common response with 57% is all three, A, B, and C. Quickly, yes, with the A and C, that's the second place.
Thank you, Lynn. It's saying, I think we have a smart audience who are listening very carefully. It would also be my preference, but of course, everybody works in a different environment. So what happened in the survey? So in the survey, we saw that most of the people attending create reports with conclusions, and that the conclusions are based on audit ratings. So the products, we say, benchmark a certain quality. Now, the topic was further, if we see assurance per audit, we report with a conclusion. We understand the quality of the work performed and the audit working program as a coverage for the field work. We have achieved assurance for that specific audit assignment. After a quarter or half a year, you have to create a management letter, and the management letter would also be part of your assurance function. Most of the people interviewed create management letters, or whatever you call it. In our company, we call it a quarterly audit opinion. But also most of us, say the light blue part on the right, 85%, do not provide an overall conclusion or rating for the entire company or business line. And then my interesting reflection comes in. Why would you provide individual ratings and conclusions per assignment and to do not the same for the entire company or business line? Apparently, the assurance function is interpreted at audit level to do conclusions and rating at audit level, but your assurance function at business line or company level is concluded upon the aggregation of information received from individual audit assignments. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just seeing it's different. So beginning with the end in mind, your audit message with assurance is based upon the macro risk assessment. The macro risk assessment steers upon how the universe is being structured, and you choose your assignments based on risk assessments and priorities and cycles. I think that's a good thing. In our company, we do the same, and we try to understand what are the most risky parts in the value chain to choose among them for the audit work to be covering these risky areas, and we make conclusions and ratings on these products. I think most in the audience is also doing this. But then the difference exists. In my company, we create reports with ratings and conclusions, and we also create ratings and conclusions every quarter and every year per business line and for the entire company. And it's giving lots of added value. I always wondered why, and I'm working in a bank, that the supervisory board in our company is really happy with us that we do in this way. And I suppose the supervisory board of our company talks to supervisory boards of other companies, and other companies, they are just aggregating the conclusions from reports into reflections, not ratings, and no overall conclusions for the company. And those supervisory boards are also happy. So apparently the assurance function we have per company is different, and is based upon our personal judgment how to provide the added value to the company. And the next thing we can conclude upon that it's very difficult to backtest coverage. It's not so difficult to backtest coverage in an individual assignment because you have created a working program based on the risks in the audit to be performed. You most likely will have a sort of a quality review at the end of the assignment to understand if the audit work performed is done completely and is also covering everything you need to have done. So coverage in an individual assignment is not so difficult. However, coverage in a universe on a yearly level is way more difficult. And backtesting, I suppose, for 1 year is possible, but for cycles of 3 or 5 years is going to be really hard to demonstrate if you have achieved your cycle coverage. And then it brings me to the following question, and maybe it's a little bit rhetorical. Is the audit assurance in individual audits and reports different than assurance over a business line? And if so, why? For me, it's not. For me, assurance is something you have to provide as an auditor towards your auditees directly in an assignment, but also towards your board members or supervisory board members, or in our case also to external supervisors. And the next question then comes up, if you think this is your role, providing assurance to auditees and to board and supervisory board, are you able to evidence, to substantiate the coverage you have achieved? Did you do enough work for your opinion, both at audit level, but also at the board level for the company as a whole? And that's an interesting one. I suppose it's never going to be 100% evidence. It's not a black and white. It's not mathematics. It's really subjective, of course, to interpret. But anyway, that's my last part of the presentation. Something I would like you to ask for yourself in your company. Take up this challenge. Talk about it in your department. Raise the question in your management team and think about it, because it's an interesting one, and it would bring you to maybe to a next level of understanding how your assurance function is being interpreted in the audit department, but also by your auditees, who are in fact highly depending on the quality of your work.
Thank you, Norbert, for a very good presentation.
You're welcome. I was happy to do this, and I'm looking forward for contacting everyone who want to know more about the topic.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And to everyone, have a lovely day.